Okay, another video for the week. So, I was doing one of those things I normally never do, and I tell you all the time never to do, and that was watching television. Damn, can't even follow my own advice. What am I telling you anything for? But regardless, it was interesting in its own right. It doesn't really matter what the show was, it was just some crap on Netflix or whatever. But there was like one line that was in it that I kind of like really spoke to me in respect to when it comes to identity and what it all kind of means. It's like who are you and stuff like that, and like how do people see you and who are you and what does that all mean? So the line kind of went something along the lines of like, you know, the person you think you are in your heart isn't really who you are, and the people, the versions of you that reside in other people's hearts, you know, isn't really the true you. It's like none of them are really the real you. They're all like these poor, you know, portraits of you. There's like ideas and there's features of what you are that are captured in these like kind of abstractions in these people's minds, but it isn't really the real you. Like, that's kind of the weird thing about it, is like no one, because identity is just such a hard thing to pin, because one, it's fluid, it's ever changing. Who you are isn't, you know, something that's just stated. It's not like you know, that kind of belief in like essenceism or essence, or fuck, I don't know. Pretty much the idea that like you were born to be a baker, you know, and that's you know what you are destined to be, because, well, that's your essence, like that's who you are. The reality about identity, it is fluid in that respect, where it's just like it can change and move over time, and it can also be molded to what you want it to be. But even then, even with all of that, and if you documented it, and if, or, you know, with historians and stuff like that, like, perfect example is like people, you know, who have autobiographies written about them. Like, so you can read, and I'm actually reading an autobiography at the moment about a great Australian Prime Minister named Bob Hawke. And no, I'm not going to go into all of his great achievements. You know, you can do that on your own time. But essentially, even though it's a 900-page, like, super thick book, got all this detail, I can read it, and I might have an idea of what he's like, or what his identity is, but I don't ever truly fully know who he is, you know what I mean? And like, I know it seems vague, and me saying that all sounds like vague and hard to pin down, but that's kind of the nature of it, is it is difficult to pin these things down. So that's why when people talk about what they identify as, or they see themselves as this, I always kind of get confused a little bit by it, because I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you act like, in my instance of being like a biostatistician, like, what does it mean to be a biostatistician? Like, do all of them agree on the same things? Do they all look alike? Do they all sound alike? Do they believe all the same things? Do they do the same things on weekends? Like, what do you mean by that label? Like, you're identifying as something, but could you even define what that is? And yeah, I'm sure you could put some sort of like I said, some features to it, like, oh, biostatistician, they work with health data. Yeah, but then that's so broad in its own kind of category. It's just like the different facets of health and the data that goes along with it. It's like, god damn. I mean, that ranges so far, like, you can't really box that or categorize that very easily. It's like, yeah, we can put a word to it, but it doesn't really, the word and the phrase or the categorization doesn't properly or fully capture what the phenomenon that's at, like, play. So I think it's something to think about, is that, like, people, they have an idea of who you are, and you have an idea of who you are. Like, you know, going back to that quote, you know, like, the thought of yourself or the idea of yourself in your heart isn't really the true one, and neither is the ones that, you know, the image of yourself in the hearts of others. It's just like, neither one of them is true, but I think together they kind of create a better picture. Like, you'll never get a one-to-one. You'll never be able to completely, fully canvas what you are, because what you are is just essentially potential, which is limitless. It can't be put into a finite space. But what it can do, and I think what is worthwhile is, one, having the self-awareness and self-introspection to kind of gauge at least what are some of the features that make me me, and then also viewing how other people talk about you, and also knowing that they won't always fully tell you. I mean, depending on your, like, you know, your friendship and your relationship with a person, they won't fully tell you everything. And even then, depending on the relationship, they might tell you things that aren't true, which kind of confuses the whole thing as well. Because someone might tell you you're like this, but in reality, it's just their biased opinion, and maybe they have some malice or, you know, some contempt for you. So they try and, you know, filter, you know, a little bit of poison into your ear and, you know, cloud your judgment and stuff like that. But I think it's something worthwhile is spending time to, and I think I've written it in like one of my blog posts, in like trying to write down what you think you are. Like, what are you? And I know it sounds so like, so intangible, I guess, but give it a shot. Like I said in my blog post at the time, like, I struggled with it. Like, I looked at the sheet of paper for like an hour just trying to figure out what it was, and at the end of the day, I could only really put down one thing, which is just I am. Like, I am this entity, not necessarily this body, not necessarily this, you know, mind or person. It's just this entity that exists, and at some point it won't exist, but that's fine. Like, that's fine, because I know that I am. And I know saying that, like, saying it out loud sounds so weird, and it seems like not to make sense, but when you feel it, you understand it. It's one of those things you can't really explain, but when people encounter it, everyone knows what that feeling is like. And so I recommend doing that self-introspection yourself to kind of gauge, in some respect, who you are. And maybe you'll come to the same answer I did. Who knows, maybe you won't. But do that, and then on another aspect, I think it's worthwhile delving to what other people think about you. What do they think? And I mean, isn't that such a hard question? Because, I mean, you could be direct about it and be like, what do you think about me? What are my features? Who do you think I identify as? Yeah, right, that's normal human conversations, right? But you're going to have to gauge it indirectly based off, you know, people's tonal expression towards you, things like that, their body language, how they talk to you. I can't give you the complete breakdown list because it's unique to your own situation, but I think you need to do that two-pronged approach. Do that self-introspection, but also try and gauge through either friends, family, colleagues, you know, neighbors, or, you know, other people that you interact with in the community, how you are put together, you know what I mean? I think that's something worthwhile, because it can give you, like I said, it won't give you a perfect representation of what you are, but it might give you a bit of an outline. And then if you're not too pleased with that outline, or, well, one, you could go about trying to change that, but also, like I said, keep into mind that people aren't always the best judge. Well, like, you know, people aren't always the best judges when it comes to, you know, character. So you can't always take everything everyone says one foot, like, you know, truth of the word, you know what I mean? You got to kind of gauge a range of feelings, and then also yourself have that final kind of conclusive decision making yourself, where if you think what this person is saying about you, or what you think this person feels about you and thinks you represent, is kind of wrong, and you don't think it's right at all, you might be in the position, if you know, do enough soul searching and enough kind of like meditating on it, you might be able to dismiss it and go, no, I think that person is off kilter and is, you know, not framing, and is framing things in the wrong way when it comes to who you are. So, I don't know, that's just something for you to think about. Like always, you know, give it a shot. If you enjoy it, you know, like always, come back. But, you know, leave a like and a subscribe, and yeah, tell your friends. Get amongst it. Sweat.